Assassin's Creed Shadows is finally here, bringing one of the most requested settings of all time, which is the Feudal Japan. Ubisoft has promised a fresh take on the series, blending the familiar open-world RPG formula with the deeper stealth mechanism and a dynamic open world for the very first time. And a dual protagonist system, which has already been done in plenty of different Assassin's Creed games, but only this time it's a little bit different. But does Shadows truly evolve the series, or is it just another Assassin's Creed game with a new skin? Now, after spending nearly 100 hours exploring the world and engaging in its combat and experiencing its entire main storyline, I have a lot of things I really want to go through in today's review about this game, and I promise this review is going to be one of the most in-depth and detailed review that you have ever seen out there, because I took my time in order to play at least over 80 hours of the game before I give my honest review on the game. I've also seen almost 40 to 50% of all the side quests that's present in the game. I've seen almost everything and done everything, including exploring the entire map. So I now have a complete idea and what I personally feel about this game on whether or not if Assassin's Creed Shadows is worth it. Now first, let's talk about the world and atmosphere of Assassin's Creed Shadows. This is no doubt one of the best Assassin's Creed settings that we've ever had so far, and Ubisoft's recreation of feudal Japan is nothing short of breathtaking, from misty mountain paths to bustling villages, and from tranquil bamboo forests to war-torn battlefields. Every location feels carefully crafted. Now, one of the biggest new feature in the game that we have never seen in any other Assassin's Creed games before is the new seasonal system, in which the game dynamically transitions between 4 different seasons. And these aren't just visual changes. Now, these seasons aren't just something that you can call as just visual changes, because there's a lot more to these seasons than what I was personally expecting before I got to play the game. Because, for example, in winter, the game actually has a lot of thick snow, which literally just slows down your movement speed, making the traversal and stealth system of the game far more difficult than it usually would in any other seasons. Now, changing over to the autumn season, the fallen leaves basically crunches beneath your feet, which I noticed that it creates this crackling noise when you step on these fallen branches and leaves, which potentially gives away your position when you're trying to be stealthy in the game. Now, it doesn't matter if you're playing as Yasuke or Naoe. If you're trying to hide in a bush in the autumn season, you need to make sure that you're not moving as fast as you usually would in any other seasons, because especially in the autumn season, when you're trying to stay stealthy in a bush or places which has a lot of leaves, your character needs to walk as slow as possible, because the AI in the game are designed in order to pick up all of these dynamic noises that's present in the environments. So anytime you move through these grass and bush, it's definitely going to be making a lot of noise. Especially if you're playing as Yasuke, you're going to make a lot of noise because he's a huge character. And if it's autumn season, I suggest it's better to avoid stealth in the ground as much as possible and pick the roof always. Now, these little touches just makes the world feel a lot more alive in a way that previous Assassin's Creed games were never quite able to manage. Now, with that said, while the world is stunning, it also suffers from a problem that has plagued Ubisoft's open world games for all these years, which is none other than lack of depth and interactivity in the open world. Because don't get me wrong, the world is of course massive and beautiful, but at times it just feels like the open world is more just like a backdrop, rather than something that you truly feel like it's an alive open world where you get to engage with all the things that you see around the world, that no matter what kind of village or town or any busy areas that you try to explore, you'll notice that the entire environment seems very much dead. Like, you have absolutely no interactive ability with any of the NPCs, and there are very few shops in the open world. And by the way, the shops and vendors are the only thing that you can interact in the entire massive open world that Ubisoft has created. So it kind of just leaves you to feel that the world itself, the entire designing of the world, is just gone to such a waste, because there is nothing you can interact with, and everything feels so lifeless and empty, and you just go through the entire world and just feel like there is literally nobody around the world, and you're just basically all alone exploring all abandoned places. I don't know if this is just me, but I strongly felt that the world needs a lot more interactive things in order to make it feel more alive. Now, although there are different NPCs in the game, it just seems like the NPCs go about their own routines, but then at the same time, they don't feel as dynamic as they could have been. Now, you can of course explore multiple temples, villages, and fortresses, but they often just seem like it's some sort of a movie set with absolute emptiness, and it doesn't really feel like a real world, or the world doesn't have any sort of a purpose for you as a player when you're trying to explore these things. Now, of course, I can't really refuse that the game is a massive step forward in terms of visual representation, but it still struggles with making the world feel more meaningful playful and interactive. Now that's one of my biggest takedowns, where I personally felt that Ubisoft could have done a lot more with such an amazing world and such a setting, and I just couldn't stop comparing this game with Ghost of Tsushima and Red Dead Redemption, because both of these games look visually stunning and it's massive open world, and with what Rockstar Games has done with the open world of Red Dead Redemption, any part of the place that you go, you kind of feel like the world is communicating with you, and you feel like, you know, you're kind of interacting in the open world. The same also goes on with Ghost of Tsushima, where you have a very good interaction with the open world itself, like the wind and the animals and the NPCs and all the things that you can basically do. It just felt like the world itself is completely empty, literally nothing fun to do apart from just doing your missions and main storyline. And I'm pretty sure that after you completed the main game, I don't think that anybody is just going to go out there and free roam and explore the world, because it just feels very lifeless in general. Now moving on to the next main thing, which is of course the gameplay mechanism. And speaking of mechanism, we of course need to touch down into stealth and combat system, which has been one of the most amazing features that Ubisoft has added so far, comparing that with any other Assassin's Creed game so far. Now, if you're someone that's been craving a return of stealth-focused Assassin's Creed gameplay, then you're in for a treat, because Shadows is going to be a pleasant surprise for all of you guys. Because now, Ubisoft has clearly taken the feedback from all the previous games, and now they brought stealth back to the forefront. We're playing as the protagonist, Naoe, the shinobi assassin. Is absolutely fantastic experience, and she's one of the most quick and precise assassins that I have played as so far, and has one of the best arsenals of tools that actually makes sneaking through the enemy strongholds feel much more fluid and rewarding. Now, one of the biggest additions that Ubisoft has added for Naoe is the new grappling hook, which is unlike any other previous Assassin's Creed games, where climbing was your basic and primary method of vertical movements, but then now you can just zip between rooftops, creating new escape routes and very quickly repositioning yourself, which fundamentally just changes the way that you approach the entire stealth system. And it's really hard now for me to imagine playing any other Assassin's Creed games without actually having the grappling hook anymore. Now, another major improvement in the stealth system that I want to note down is the light and shadow system, where Naoe is now going to be blending into darkness, making her nearly invisible to enemies, where you can simply just extinguish all the light source in the game, where you can create way more hiding spots literally in the open. And the game also encourages careful positioning, which is one of the best things that I've seen so far, because how you position your character is, for the very first time, is playing such a crucial role in the game. And it's a great addition that Ubisoft has added in, but at the same time, the game gives you a lot of freedom. It doesn't really force you in order to play in a particular playstyle, which means that it can sometimes feel like an optional mechanism rather than a core gameplay element itself. And then there's Yasuke, who's the second protagonist that you're going to be playing as, who's completely unlike Naoe, who always excels in direct combat. Now, don't get me wrong, he's powerful, heavily armored, and can take on large group of enemies head on. And don't get me wrong, in the beginning, it definitely feels a lot more fun and has a very different contrast to Naoe's stealth-focused playstyle, but it very quickly reveals as some of the biggest flaws that Assassin's Creed Shadows has. Because the melee combat elements in Assassin's Creed Shadows is not actually that great, to be honest. Because as we know, Assassin's Creed has never usually focused on deep melee mechanism, and despite Yasuke having raw power, this also means that combat definitely feels a lot more repetitive, and it just seems like you're doing the same thing again and again till the end of the game, and you just get so frustrating seeing the same animations, same combat mechanisms, same moves, and as you keep progressing through the game, you really don't feel like playing as Yasuke anymore. And also another thing that I noticed is that the enemy variety in the game is very, very limited, and also the animations are like very flashy, and something that they've completely reanimated for Assassin's Creed Shadows in particular. The actual mechanism of the game itself boils down to simple attack, block, and counter patterns, and nothing apart from this. And this is where the dual protagonist system starts to feel a little bit more unbalanced side, where Naoe's gameplay is much more refined and engaging, while Yasuke often feels like he's more simplistic and very much clunky character. Now, of course, the game allows you to switch between both the characters as you like in a completely free way, and this definitely lets a lot of players to think, why do I even need to play as Yasuke anymore? Because he's a character that's gonna run slow, he can't really climb things, he's very clunky, and although he's huge and monstrous and he has a lot of brute force, he's still very clunky in order to operate this character. So I don't think that any player is gonna prefer playing as Yasuke compared to Naoe. And that's where the biggest stake comes in, because Yasuke's limitations in stealth and traversal makes him feel like a secondary character in his own game. So I really think that Ubisoft should have given a lot more importance to both the characters, because the game definitely focuses embraces the storyline as well as the entire gameplay mechanism based on two different characters, but then it feels like they've put in more work with Naoe, and there's absolutely no love shown to Yasuke for some reason. And now let's move on to one of the most important parts of the game, which is the story narration and the characters in the game, and how well they impacted the impression I have for Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, to be honest, the storyline has so much more potential for the conflict, tension, and character development, and unfortunately, it seems like the game just feels heavily rushed through in the most compelling moments of the game, and it just feels like the biggest issue is how quickly it just brushes past the tension between the two protagonists, where I feel that the game should have given a massive focus with the emotions of both of these different characters, but then for some reason, instead of focusing on their emotions of both of these characters, it seems like the game just resolves it in the most immediate way, where Yasuke has basically destroyed the lives and families of Naoe, but for some reason, with just a single small cutscene, they end up becoming the best allies and best friends that care for each other out of nowhere. And I just feel like there's absolutely no tension, no emotions, and there's literally no genuine natural connection that was built between both of these characters in terms of representing how they hate each other for what they've done and for all the past things that they've done so far. And the biggest issue is how quickly the game just brushes off all of those tensions, and everything just feels like, you know, it's a wasted opportunity. It could have been a lot more sentimental and emotional game, but then it definitely seems like a lot of Yasuke's part in the game has been heavily cut down for some reason. I don't know if this is originally planned, or maybe Ubisoft just delayed the game and they decided to cut off most of the parts for Yasuke, but it definitely does come down to this position where the game feels like it's completely rushed down and the storyline doesn't really have a massive impact as it really should. Now, if that's not a problem already, it also seems like the pacing of the game is another problem of its own. Like many other Ubisoft games, Shadows basically uses this open-end mission structure, which makes the narrative feel a lot more like a fragmented segments of the Animus, where you're basically spending 50 to 80 to 100 hours just to hunt down all the different targets, collecting clues, and piecing together all the informations where the main story is left out in the background, wanting to be picked up in the final act. Now, this structure itself makes it extremely difficult to feel truly invested in the character's journey as well as the entire storyline. It moreover feels like the developers designed the gameplay first and then decided to write down the story and alter the story according to the gameplay, rather than first getting a script for the narration of the story and then creating a gameplay that goes along perfectly blending in with the storyline itself. So the entire story just feels like a rushed out mess in my honest opinion, and I think it's all based on the pacing of the story more than the actual narration and the story writing itself. And now let's move on to the world design and side content of the game itself, because I know that when it comes to RPG open world games, side quest is definitely going to be playing a massive role in RPG games. And Shadows world is filled with so many different activities like forts to raid, temples to explore, bandit camps to clear, and plenty of collectible items that scattered around the open world. Now, on the surface, it all sounds great, to be honest, but then when you're playing the game, however, it feels more like the game is completely repetitive for some reason. Now, one of the biggest issues that I have personally noticed is that many of the side activities in the game don't actually feel very rewarding for some reason. Too many missions that just boils down to simply fetch quest or generic assassination contracts that we've been seeing in all the RPG Assassin's Creed games so far that don't really add up any depth to the experience. And then there's of course this Ubisoft overuse of X-ray vision, which is known as the eagle vision mechanism in the game. Rather than naturally discovering things of the world, you're most often going to be using the eagle vision all the time, because exploring without the eagle vision seems extremely hard, and it's really hard to spot enemies in this game for some reason if you don't use the eagle vision. So it seems like you always need the eagle vision in order to traverse through the open world or find the objectives or see what's around you. And although Ubisoft said that you can visually go ahead and explore the world and whatnot, but then the game is definitely designed in such a way that you constantly need to keep using your eagle vision, and it just gets very annoying after some time because you always need to constantly keep using the X-ray vision, or some items and enemies around the world are nearly impossible to spot without the X-ray vision. So you're often just pressing a button in order to highlight these objectives, so it kind of just takes away the joy of actually exploring the open world itself. Now, apart from these issues, I definitely had a great time of playing about 80 hours of Assassin's Creed Shadows. I really explored the entire map. I tried to do as many side quests as I could. I'm not going to be going too much in details with the storyline because I know that you guys are currently playing the game and I don't want to spoil the game for you guys, so I want to keep this review as simple as possible, but at the same time I'm going to be giving you guys my honest reviews and opinions on what I personally felt when I played the game and what my true impressions were. And also keep in mind that these are my personal impressions. It of course varies from different reviewers. Some people might have enjoyed the game in a different way, and I might have enjoyed it in a completely different way. So I really encourage all of you guys to go ahead and check out all the different reviews before you make your own decision. So now comes my final thoughts and my verdicts on whether or not if I recommend Assassin's Creed Shadows for you guys. And the answer to that is going to be based on if you're a long-time Assassin's Creed fan of the entire series or not. And if you love Ubisoft open world games, and obviously if you play any of the Ubisoft open world games, you kind of know that the open world is created by Ubisoft, by the kind of quality that the open world has. Because usually when you compare Ubisoft open world games to some of the other developers like Rockstar, you definitely see a major decline in quality and content. So if that is something that you guys are used to, then you'll probably have a great time playing Shadows. And the stealth mechanism in this game is of course one of the best that they've had in all these years. And of course there's absolutely nothing to complain when it comes to visual representation of the game, because the graphics is truly next gen. It looks phenomenal. I really enjoyed every single visual aspect of the game, and there are some truly fantastic moments that you're going to go through in the game when you're exploring the open world. But if you were hoping for a true re-innovation of an Assassin's Creed formula, then I'm going to be honest, Assassin's Creed Shadows doesn't quite actually get there, because the game has the same long-standing issues, repetitive mission designs, weak storytelling, and definitely one of the things that I absolutely hate in recent Assassin's Creed games, which is the melee combat. It's still the same presentation from previous Assassin's Creed games that we've been seeing ever since Ubisoft decided to go in the RPG route. Now, at the end of the day, Assassin's Creed Shadows is exactly what you expect of it. It's another Assassin's Creed game with refinements, but it's definitely not a revolutionary leap forward for the series that was most needed. Now, if you're okay with all of these things, then you're definitely going to be enjoying this game. But then if you are hoping for something groundbreaking, then I really think you should temper down your expectations for Assassin's Creed Shadows. And now for my final score of the game, I honestly want to give Assassin's Creed Shadows a solid 7.5 out of 10. Although there could be a lot of improvements, and I would honestly say if Ubisoft would have done a much better job in terms of pacing the storyline and making the game completely groundbreaking, I think I would have gone for a 9.5 or even 10 score. Let me know down below in the comments, are you guys playing the game? Because it seems like 1 million players have been playing the game on day one of launch, and that's a huge milestone for Ubisoft. It's definitely a hit. A lot of players are definitely playing the game. But I really want to hear from you guys. What do you think personally? Leave your thoughts down below in the comments. I would love to read and reply to as many of you guys as I possibly can. Now, with that being said, if you guys did enjoy this review, make sure to go ahead, drop a like, let me know your thoughts, and subscribe for more reviews on video games like these on my channel. Now, with that being said, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Until then, take it easy, fams, and goodbye.